Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
I just got out of a massage. It was delightful. I have a little bit of massage drunkenness.
You are
I'm
so
all woozy.
freaking
I was late to
cute.
this recording.
You were late, and you are never, ever, ever late. But if there's
I know.
going to be a good reason, it is because you are massage
Yeah,
drunk.
that was a good gift you got me.
I got it for you for
She got me a
Christmas.
massage with somebody that we go to often.
Yes.
And she is fantastic.
And it just makes your...
Sometimes I go in and I get a massage and it's just like batters my body and I feel like I just had somebody repeatedly punch me all over the place.
And here's the thing. I don't mind that if then it's like a magical recovery where you're better than you were.
No.
But oftentimes you get it and then you feel beat up afterwards.
Worse off for days on end.
Yeah. Can't do it.
No, I feel wonderful. It is a wonderful day.
No, I feel
It's
wonderful.
fantastic.
And now we're going to record a podcast.
We are. What are we going to talk about today?
You know, we're going to talk about something that you are so good at in life.
I'm really good at this.
Yeah, you are.
Sex.
It's, you know,
Another one of those episodes? Sure.
sure.
I'm gonna-
as many as we need.
I'm going to define my technique in detail. This one's for you guys out there.
Oh my gosh.
Just helping you out.
Do a little loop-diddy-loop. And then
The old loop-de-de-loop. You ever tried that? It's magical.
No, but actually you are really good at what we're going to you are good at sex, baby. But you're really
Duh.
also good at this other thing we're going to talk about today. And this is something I never would have known to look for in friends or a partner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably one of the ways you have impacted my life the most.
This isn't sex we're talking about?
You've rocked my world.
Yeah, you got that.
No, today we're talking
The
about...
vision.
I love that you wanted to beat me.
Vision. We're going to talk about vision and vision casting within couples because when we talk about the idea of vision, there is a culture of casting vision that really relates entirely around external things as far as like accomplishments.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be a millionaire and have 3.5 children and have the biggest house.
That actually all
And be
sounds great. I would
famous.
love a half child.
A half child? The upper or lower half?
I don't know.
I'll take
which
the one that
one's-
doesn't squawk too much.
I probably want the one that doesn't poop all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Either one, you
Both
kind of...
ends are messy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we're going to talk about vision today because I think that oftentimes I will have people come into my office. When it comes to couples, we'll talk about married, dating couples.
And singleness. I think you can apply this in relationships with your friends.
Absolutely. But I'm going to specifically talk a second about couples.
Yes.
So couples will come into my world and I'll talk about their marriage will be
In the crapper.
in the old dumpster.
It will be on its way to Nowhereville.
Yeah. I mean, they will feel very successful as a couple in things that they've created in life.
Yeah.
Maybe businesses that they've built or purposes that they've ran after. But then they'll have the conversation, we feel like roommates. And they'll say our marriage feels very boring. We don't feel connected. Our connection is all around the thing that we do.
Yeah.
And I have this a ton of people have entered into my office like this. And so I'll always ask the question, well, do you guys cast vision for the relationship? And
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, yes, we've accomplished all of our vision. Because they've never heard of, the context of casting vision for the relationship, again, is always around purpose.
Yeah.
But for you and I, one of the things that we've done and something that I've been very purposeful in,
Intentional.
very intentional about, is making
Intentionality
cat
is
calls.
actually a very... No, I was just kind of saying that because it's like kind of a sexy thing.
It is a
To
sexy
be
thing,
intentional
actually.
about relationship.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like you said, are intentional about their jobs, their careers, their whatever is stressing them out the most. They're paying the most attention to that.
Yeah.
And so they either don't pay attention to their relationship if it's not screaming, or
Yes,
if it
if it
is
isn't on
screaming,
fire.
they still don't know how to create good attention for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I'm going to talk a little bit about our marriage, our relationship.
What? No, I don't like that. I don't share anything about our relationship.
So I'm going to talk about some negative aspects.
Oh.
That led to more positive aspects.
Okay, we have a counseling session next week. I'm ready. Hit me with your best shot.
Do we have a couples meeting next week?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm making it today, right now, after we have this conversation.
Okay.
Just kidding.
That sounds fun. Well, okay, so I was going to jump into our relationship, but now my brain's thinking about structure, and it's like, maybe I should just talk about...
No, start with us. It's a great idea.
Well, okay, so...
Can I start?
I'm going to say this, and then you can jump in.
Okay, great.
One thing that you said in the marriage is, whatever you tell me that I am, I'll become.
Oh, that's actually where I was going to start too. We're on the same page.
We've had different levels of arguments, aggressions, knockdown, drag out fights, verbal battery towards each other in some of the ways that we've talked. Mm-hmm. And my hand's way up in the air for some of the things that I've said.
We've both been real dicks.
Yeah, we have. I've had a filthy potty mouth in painful events. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the way I've dialogued, and I'm absolutely okay with telling on myself for that.
Yeah.
But I think that, there's been times where I've used language like, you're being such an asshole, and you've come back around and said, I'm going to become what you call me.
Totally.
Which at times felt like you were like, you want to call me that? I'll act like that. Right? No, it felt like a threat.
Totally. Like, I'm going to punish you.
At the foundation of it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what that was.
No, it's just self-awareness.
Why don't you describe that? Because I think that's a good place to start. Then we're going to back up to some of how we entered into the relationship in healthy ways. Yeah. And some of that.
Well, I know that for me, I grew up in a household where my dad spoke negatively about me a lot to me. And I noticed this pattern where like everyone in my life liked me and thought I was wonderful and sweet and great, except my dad.
Yeah, he thought you were a sociopath.
Well, he was concerned I was going to become a sociopath. But there was lots of things like when I was a teenager where he called me bitchy and all of those kinds of things, right?
Right.
And it was regularly. He was constantly telling me that. And I found that I was like, you're the only person who says this about me.
Right.
But also, I do probably act differently towards you than anybody else as well. Mm-hmm. And I could see, like, as I was trying to put the dots together when I was younger, I was like, oh, I legit am impacted by the words around me. Now, this is why I don't agree with the 5 love languages, because people are like, oh, words don't matter to me. That's not actually true. Every person is affected by what they speak and by what they hear, because even just scientifically, the way our brains flag what we say as important. So what it hears us saying out loud, it flags that as pay attention to this. This is true. Right. So what I say actually matters. And then when people say things over you, whether or not you can say all day long you don't believe them, but people will get worn down. If you tell somebody that they are good over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, eventually that's going to seep in. Right. If you tell someone there's a piece of crap over and over and over again, it's eventually going to sink in.
And we're going to talk a little bit of that. One thing that I want to make note of, this is like my, what would you call it? Disclaimer. There are people within the culture of what we're talking about that go into hypervigilance over every word that comes out of their mouth has to be protected. We're talking about heart posture. There'll be times where you playfully will call me a jerk.
Oh, totally.
Right. And the heart posture and the heart content of that lands entirely different. I don't all of a sudden think, oh, I'm a jerk. And, I'm not feeling beat up by it. I actually feel the truth behind that word in the context of the heart posture.
Totally. The other day I made a post about how good looking you were and how distracted I was. And your response back was idiot.
It was hysterical.
And I died laughing when you wrote that back to me. But no part of me thought, you think I'm an idiot.
It was a slow camera push in and then it bubbles up with all this stuff and sounds. And I was like, idiot. But you laughed at that, right?
Yeah. And I could hear you saying it with endearment. And, but that's not actually true about me. And you're not using it in a fight.
Yeah.
If you called me an idiot in a fight,
in
it
an anger
would
war,
stick.
it would entirely be an indifferent thing, and it would be an identity statement. And so
I do want to make one more clarity.
Yeah.
Because we're saying joking is okay to sometimes do that, but passive aggressive joking, not okay.
Right.
That actually still seeps into people.
So we will have sarcastic banter inside of the context of our relationship where there's no pain in that. There's no seriousness in that. And that doesn't actually affect us negatively because we don't have a culture of passive aggressive sarcasm or passive aggressive joking where there's a sword hidden inside of our words.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to say it and we're angry about something, we're going to just be aggressive.
Totally. And we're going to say, why are you doing that? You're being an idiot. But one of the things that I think about this is we really had to create a culture. And I want to do a podcast, maybe one entirely on this, about how when you have money in the bank, we have a lot of room where we can
bank.
Yeah, our emotional love tanks are so full that we can joke with each other, and it actually feels like a love language to joke back and forth. It's not taking, but we also in the beginning of our marriage, I'd have to ask you, do you mean that? Do you think
Are you serious about that? Do you really think I'm that? Do you actually process life about me in that way? And I'm
Is there a hidden agenda?
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, no.
Yeah.
I would never say that.
Yeah. And I quickly learned that your sense of humor is actually things that are the opposite of what is true. You find really funny.
Like, yes.
Outrageous,
extreme opposites. It's all preposterous to what I actually think, feel, or believe. And that's why it's funny to me because I'm like, how could I ever think or feel that way?
Right.
I think that that's purposeful in talking about the concept of language is awareness of heart. And heart and how each culture, relational culture is different. And I think that people need to start thinking about that. What is my relational culture? What is the way that I respond to words? What is the value that I have on words? What's the context words are being delivered inside of my space as we go into this? And
inside of your relationship, you guys have to create communication rules. So in our relationship, the joking that we make feels like love to both of us.
Absolutely. I giggle all the time.
Totally.
My mom will jokingly. Now, in the past, I will use my mom as a quick example.
This is a great example.
My mom will, in the past, use harsh language towards me that was really painful.
Yeah, when you were growing up.
And now there's been a restoration of relationship, a heart posture of repentance, a reconnection. So now she'll make jokes like, she'll say things like, oh, you little shit.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And I will giggle so hard
I know.
that my mom called me that because it's not rooted in anger, aggression, intensity, truth.
Yeah.
It's actually play. And now I'm just like, I love that about you, Mom.
Oh, totally.
Right.
It's endearing.
And so we have to understand that. Now, as we do you want to go deeper into the words and language that we speak over?
Well, I was just going to say they affect everything. And anybody who does anything in self-help, anyone who's been religious in any way, almost all of those idea systems have something to say about the power of words.
Yes.
Because words are powerful. They create momentum. They create life.
They create vision in our head and our mind. They create perspective.
Yeah. And they change how we think, which changes how we act and behave. So words are this weapon that we all have. And like I said, we are not religious about this. We're not like, oh my gosh, don't say something negative,
and
it could happen.
And we're also not a victim to words.
Yeah. If somebody says something mean to me, I'm not going to soak it in.
Right. I'm not going to make a lifestyle out of it. So now in the context of our relationship, what you did say is, hey, if this is the normal, if you're going to tell me that I'm always intense, I'm going to start just believing it.
Yeah.
Like if it's just a record in the background that's on play, I'm going to start buying into the idea that, with Justin, I'm intense.
Yeah.
Simple. And so one of the things
then I will subconsciously recreate that cycle over and over again.
I remember in my childhood, one of the accusations that I got from my mom is that you're out drinking. I know you're out drinking. I know you're out doing bad things because she was trying to call my bluff. She just figured you're a teenager, you're doing this. And the first couple of years of high school, I was always
like a good kid.
I was a good kid. I'd walk away from partying. I wouldn't drink. I'd get made fun of for it, but I was like, I'm not going to do this. And then at some point, I actually couldn't beat the voice that was like, you're doing this. I'm like, I can't get credit or affirmation for what I am doing well. So I give up. I might as well just go drink. I might as well go party. It doesn't pay off anyways to make good decisions.
Yeah.
As a young person, that's where I collapsed in on it.
Absolutely.
And so there was a vision that was being cast that
for
said,
you, this is who you are. This is what you're doing. And you stepped into it.
I might as well just embrace it at some point. And that's what I find also about, clients. I'll have a client come in who's cheated multiple times on his spouse or her spouse, who hates themselves for it. And I'll begin to call the gold out. No, actually, you're a faithful person. You're a loving, thoughtful person who wants to fight for the person across from you.
Yeah.
I begin the declaration of higher truth and casting vision for who they are in my eyes and potentially God's eyes. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And what I've found that across the board is this vision casting.
People want to live up to it.
They go, I want to live up to that. I want to become that.
Yeah. I remember when we first got married, or we first met actually when we were just friends, and you cast so much vision. You're like, I see you as somebody who's comfortable in her own skin and who's feminine and womanly, because I was not, who doesn't have to hide because I was a hider, who's powerful and who has something to say. And I mean, you literally came in and everything I wasn't, you saw that I could be.
And I remember even telling you, Abby, you are going to so embrace your body, your beauty, and all of that, that you will actually speak on stage to women and men alike, but even to women especially, about embracing beauty, that's going to be a message that you'll have on your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, sure. But you kept saying it over and over and over and over again. No, this is who you are. This is where you're headed. This is what is happening in your life. And I began to buy in, and I have become all of the things you said about me.
Yeah.
From that age. And I've seen it happen over and over again. And so...
And I'm really sorry for the places I called you an ass.
Because
that chicken came home to roost.
Okay, so then what happened is in our marriage, you started casting vision for our marriage, and it wasn't in the moments because everything was going right.
Right. It was going very wrong.
Yes. And this is one of the number one things. I make all of the couples I work with learn this skill, vision casting, because the truth is everybody behaves better when they have hope. When they believe they are headed towards love, people respond better. Yeah. When people are like, this is all it's ever going to be. I'm never going to be seen. I'm never going to be heard. I'm never going to be loved. They show up with their ugliest, most triggered selves.
Yep.
And so people have to learn to it's one of the first things I do with couples. We have to get people's hope that things can change, that things can be better. Because until they have hope, there's no point in meeting with them, because I will be like, every time trying to give them tools, and there's no point. They've already killed. Yeah. They've already killed transformation before it could start.
They're like, what's the point of these tools? Because they're not going to be useful anyways.
Yeah.
I want to add a point to this in vision. It's kind of a sidebar, but I remember in our marriage, I had the ability to cast vision for our relationship externally, but a lot of times when it came to disagreements. So I would have, a lot of people will go into fantasy or imagination about the potential for conflict, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about this for a second. So I oftentimes, when it came to conflict, was very scared of conflict. I always felt like I was going to lose inside of conflict in any relationship. And so I would imagine all the ways that conflict was about to go bad and all the ways that I would be fighting in order to get that conflict to go well.
Yeah.
So I would cast vision in my mind. I'd play the script out for whatever situation I was about to dialogue about. And then I'd get to the table, and then all of a sudden it would go exactly the way that I did. And at some point...
Well, yeah, because you posture yourself for the vision that you follow it. Your emotions follow your vision.
Mm-hmm. So I'm coming up guarded into a conversation to tell you about something. Now all of a sudden you're reacting the exact way that I thought you would. And now I'm at war. Now I'm like, all right, here come the swords that I plan to use when she used those swords.
Yep.
And we being dicing and slicing. And at some point I remember where you'd be like, I know that you thought this was going to go bad. I could feel it.
I could, because you would act different. You'd come braced. You'd come with your walls up. And there was no way for me to feel heard and connect to that soft part of you because you already
determined how this was going to go and who I was going to be inside of it and who you were going to be.
Yeah, it was a very self-fulfilling prophecy.
So the reason I bring that up is that in my even imagination life, I began to recreate the vision inside of that space. So I would begin to sit down and imagine me happily and peacefully sharing with you whatever it was I need to share. Then I imagine you being moved by that and be like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me. And progressively, we'd have conversations where you're like, you imagined that going well, didn't you? I'm like, I did. It's just, and you'd be like, I could feel it.
Totally. It's really remarkable how much power we have by what we have vision for. So I want to, so the first step you had was actually visualizing for yourself, this can go well for me.
Absolutely.
I can be heard. I can share without getting upset.
And I imagine the emotional state that I was in when I had those conversations, not only going into them, but my emotional state of how I responded. I began to imagine the possibilities of your emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Of how you could respond inside of it. And so I began to get vision for us on an emotional level in those ways.
Yeah.
Now I want to take that out of that context of that example and talk about how we would do that in our own marriage deliberately about our future self.
Okay. Well, do you want to start with what we do in fights?
Yeah, go ahead. You can.
Okay. So one of the things Justin has brought to the table is maybe we're in the middle of a conflict. And I just, again, want to reiterate, conflict is normal and good. The goal is that you learn to step away once you guys are triggering. And we'll talk more about that later, what that actually looks like. But once you're emotionally reacting and no longer able to lean in to understand the other person,
right?
Once that has happened, it's good to kind of step away because what's happening, the wiring in your brain is creating so that your emotions are high and then you're not. So we recommend getting your brain function back online because your relational circuits turn off once you are reacting, and you need to be able to turn your relationship circuits back on in order to reconnect.
So what she's saying is once you hit survival mode, you are in what they call the lizard brain.
Or protection or
self-protection.
Yeah.
And you're not there anymore.
No. What's lizard brain?
It's what they talk about in psychology. Lizard brain is like primordial state where you're not any longer human almost.
Oh,
you're back all the way down to survival mode.
So you're not
the
relational.
Instincts of almost an animal, and you're no longer relational. And you've got lizard brain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have to get your relationship circuits back on before you can reconnect with somebody.
Right.
And this is why fights get out of control with people.
Escalating.
Because you can talk over the same subject. Once both of your relationship circuits are off, you're not going to hear the other person. They're not going to hear you. You're not going to reconnect. And so the goal is to get your relationship circuits back online. Well, one of the ways you learn to do that is by vision casting. So do you want to give an example of what, like, let's say we were talking through something today and we got, this happened. We were talking through something.
You can give the example.
Well, did you vision cast or did I vision cast today? Or did we both?
I don't remember that happening today, but I still have massage brain.
Which is different than lizard brain, but very similar. Okay, so today we were having a conversation and we were missing each other in the conversation. Both of us were having emotional reactions to what was happening. And that doesn't, neither of us were yelling or screaming, but you can have internal emotional reactions and do nothing on the outside where, so we were both reacting. And so I could see, and I learned this from you. I could see that you were doing that. So I vision casted my heart. Hey, my heart is that I actually want to hear you in situations like this. I actually don't want you to feel run over. I actually want you to feel like you matter. I want you to feel seen and heard and validated. My heart is actually that this feels like a really safe place for you to verbally process. And I don't want this to feel like you're going to be fixed if you share.
Yeah.
So I'm just sharing, like, this is actually what
my heart, I'm giving you a picture of that, even though maybe delivery isn't coming off well.
Yeah.
So that all of a sudden, like she did there, now she's painted a picture, she's casted some vision, even for the simplicity of that moment. And I'm like, all right, she's for me. She's not here to attack me. She really does want to hear me and be available to me in processing the feelings I'm having right now. Okay. Yeah. I'm seeing you more clearly.
Right. Because as soon as our guards go up, we immediately villainize the person on the other side.
Yeah.
We got to protect from them. They're the bad guy. They're the threat. Our brain actually will tell us, like, when our guards are up, and that happens subconsciously, our brain is subconsciously telling us the person across from us is threatening.
Yep.
And so everything is about protecting yourself, and you cannot get to the other person when it's about self-protection.
Yep. And so that either in one moment, or you can be in a rough season. So you can take it from a moment to a rough season and go, hey, weekly or daily, we may have to sit down and have time where we vision cast about what our hearts are for each other and what our hearts are for this relationship.
Yeah. I remember a lot of times when you didn't know how to reconcile with me, like you're like, we both feel like we're right. Yep. We both feel unheard. We both feel like the other person is the issue. I don't know how to cross over this divide. You would simply come in vision cast. I'm for you. I love you. You're my best friend.
Yep.
I don't know how to get through this, but I want to get through this.
Right.
I'm with you till the end.
Yep.
Like, we're going to make it through this. We're going to become so good at communication.
Yep.
And you would just say what your heart and intention is, because inside, once we're in protection mode, we go to the other person isn't safe, and we start building a case to prove all of the reasons.
Every action that they have is another reason why you're right.
And it's never actually helping you build connection.
No, not at all. So that concept transcends into the vision of who we are as a couple. So let's talk about the bigger picture. Like, so yearly we have vision casting times.
Wait, before we get to yearly, can we just start with bigger than just fights? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just because I thought we'll build, my brain just went. I
saw that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have couples who, let's say that their biggest problem is that they're having a hard time with their sex life.
Yes.
So I'm going to say, I need you to vision cast with each other 3 times a week about your sex life. And that's literally just saying, we are going to have a sex life where we feel connected. We're going to have a sex life where we can talk through things instead of getting triggered and shutting down. We're going to have a sex life where we actually both enjoy sex. We're made to have a sex life that is thriving and powerful and beautiful and a safe, passionate place. That is, and like, you're having both people join in,
right,
and actually be like saying what it is that you guys are going after. It's kind of like setting the course of your ship.
And it might be part of that vision cast, say, if you and I were sitting down and we had fears inside of sex and stuff, the vision casting might even be me on my end. If I was in those shoes, I might say, I know that in our sex life, there's going to be a day when I feel so at peace inside of sex. And I imagine that I'm going to one day feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. I'm going to feel confident inside of that place. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be able to feel fully present. I'm going to be able to easily connect. I can feel that one day I'm going to feel connected very quickly. Mm-hmm. I'm going to feel comfortable asking questions inside of the bedroom. That's going to be something that's going to feel normal and natural for me to be able to do. Yeah. And so you can do that over yourself even when you're doing vision casting for specific types of things, like how you feel. Yeah. I will feel settled and in my own skin. Yeah,
that's really good. And so do you want to talk about then like vision casting like once a year as a couple? And what that looks like.
Well, I think that, that expands into, when I talk about emotional things, vision casting for emotions, like there are ways that I thought, how do I want to feel in life? Mm-hmm. And how do we want to feel in our own skin in life when it comes to different avenues of stuff? Mm-hmm. And I know that there was time where in my skin. I've used this example a million times in the past around male authority figures.
Yeah.
I felt so insignificant and small, powerless, voiceless.
Right.
And so I would begin to go, all right, in my future, when I'm around male authority figures, there's going to be a time where I feel really confident and I feel so relaxed and I feel like fought for. I'm going to feel as though they're interested in me. And then I would take it a step further and I begin the process of actually feeling those emotions in my mind. I'd imagine a specific male authority figures and I imagine them approaching me and I'd begin to feel it in my body, happiness, joy, receptivity. I would imagine them being receptive to me. And so I take that and we bring that into the relationship, right, aspect. And we would begin, every year, there's been a lot of times where we go, what are ways that we feel a certain way that we want to shift the way that we feel in the way that we relate to one another.
Yeah.
So you have historically, let me give an example. You have a couple that they're in their 60s or 70s. Their entire life, their kids talk about, that's just mom and dad. That's how they behave. And everyone's aware of their craziness and everyone's like, how do they not know that they're aggressive with each other? How do they not know that they're harsh with each other? How do they not know that they're disconnected from each other? So for us, we evaluate every year parts of our life and we go,
check in.
Let's do a check-in. Let's find out what feels like it's going well and what feels like there's bumps in the road. And if we have a bump in the road over here, let's begin to vision cast for how that's going to be different. Because these couples that are in their 60s and 70s could go, oh my gosh, in reflection of this year, because I don't think couples reflect on their lives except for finances. Did that go okay or whatever?
Sometimes not even that.
Not even that. And they go, let's reflect. What went well and what isn't going well and what clearly doesn't feel good.
Well, and this is being powerful. Like
proactive.
What we're saying is actually steer your ship where you want it to go. If you want your ship to go to the Bahamas, you're going to have to steer it there. Otherwise, it could go naturally to Antarctica. Nobody wants a vacation there.
We were headed for sunny weather. How the hell did we get here? Oh, well, I guess life just threw lemons at us.
Totally.
And
I've seen lots of every year life pulls me in a direction. I would say it's kind of like a current. Yeah. We'll naturally, we have a lake here and we'll go float in the lake in the summer. And some days the current will be so strong that you're out there for 5 minutes and you have drifted 200 feet. Right? You're not doing anything, but you've just drifted there. You didn't swim any direction.
I know. There's been times where we're eyes are closed because the sun's blaring. And then we're like, oh my God, we have to start paddling back to shore. How did we get here? And it was a slow current. It was such an undercurrent.
Yeah, you didn't even feel it.
It was just barely moving. But all of a sudden.
But I feel that way with life every year. There's major things that happen. So last year, I got so sick. And so that will just pull me in a direction.
Right.
Whatever the things are that are happening around you, the relationships, the businesses, all of the things you're going through, they will just naturally pull you. And so if you don't on a regular basis go wait, where is it that I am wanting to go? Again, emotionally, I want to be hope-filled. Oh, I have drifted from hope. Yeah. Okay. What do we need to do? It's the idea of I can actually steer my life towards where I want it to go. And so I have to first have vision for where I want it to go. Lots of people are just I'm just letting my life go by. And I'm not saying you need to know what career you want and how many kids you're going to have and all of that stuff. What I am talking about is the idea vision casting for this year, we're going to be so in unison over business decisions, or we're going to feel so alive to life. We're going to find ourselves loving our lives more than we ever have before. We're going to feel this is going to be a year of hope. This is going to be a year where we actually feel lots of redemption and where we feel traction happening under our feet.
Yep. And so I think that, and I wanted to add to that, the people that we want to be, the vision cast for that. I'm going to be a person that feels incredible amounts of peace. This is a year where I become a person that exudes peace. This is a year that I become a person that exudes strength, confidence. This is a year that I become a person that exudes compassion to myself and towards others. A vision casting for the who at almost like a molecular level of action inside of our being. Yeah.
And I'll say for me, this is so good. And whether you're single or not, like I vision cast as much with my friends as I do my husband. So it really doesn't mean you don't have to have a significant other to be good at vision casting.
Right.
I remember this last year I was so sick. I would call one of my friends every day and we would pray into vision. Like, no, our lives will show redemption. No, our lives will show restoration. No, there is a reason for me to be alive. And this is what it's going to like. And we would just kind of together bounce off of each other. Like, this is where our lives are going. And you know, she's a girl and I'm a girl and we're vision casting, and that vision added to our relationship.
Right. It built connection. It built intimacy. Right. Yeah. It was founded on vulnerability. This is a side note. Vulnerability is a foundation for all vision casting. And I don't want to interrupt you too much. I'll come back to it if you want. Please. So when it comes to vision casting, one of the things that people are most terrified about, especially let's just get on rudimentary vision casting. So foundational rudimentary vision casting is one day I'm going to be rich. That simple type of vision casting that people have are terrified to do that because they feel exposed and they feel like, well, maybe it's not true. Maybe it won't
I'll
happen.
Fail. Maybe I'll be disappointed. Maybe I'll look like an idiot.
Yep. What if people think that I'm dumb for saying that? What if people believe that I'm foolish? Whatever, however language you want to put to it. So at the core of vision casting is incredible amounts of vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're going, hey, what if this doesn't happen? What if this fails? And what if people see that and they knew what I longed for and it didn't pass? And so you're going to have to be a gigantic risk taker in your vision casting process. You're going to have to be willing to look foolish. I remember one day, I was having a conversation with my grandmother. This was probably 10 years ago. And in the process, I communicated to her, this is the amount of money that I'm going to be able to make hourly one day. This is what I'm going to be able to create. And I start just sharing with her my heart for stuff. And she laughed at me and she mocked me. And she said, oh, that's not possible. That's never going to happen. And that's her attitude. That's how she did life all the time, right? But I remember like when I said it, the walls inside of my, almost your chest tenses up, and I was like on guard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this person wasn't safe to share this with.
Up. Yep.
You armor up. But I remember being like, I will not allow the hopelessness, the small thinking and the small-sighted vision of other people to be the thing that defines my future by climbing into their box. Yeah. In order to make them feel more comfortable about the small life that they've chosen to live. Yeah. And when I talk about small, I'm not talking about finances, even that. I'm talking about the small, limited lives that people choose to live. Like, I'm never going to have anything. I'm never going to be anything. I'll never be able to be happy. I'll never be able to be joyful. Whatever. You're talking about
limited thinking.
Limited thinking. I'm like, I will not crawl into their box. So there's some of you that are out there that are listening who have been jumping into other people's boxes so that they can feel comfortable of what is possible, so that they can feel comfortable about their limitation on their life that they've created. Yeah. And so I just won't allow other people to feel comfortable anymore. I will allow them, like when someone mocks like that, it's because they feel uncomfortable about being invited outside of their box that they've lived inside of. And so you have to be okay with others being really uncomfortable.
Well, and part of it is a lot of times people don't want us to get disappointed.
Yes.
And they have faced lots of disappointment. And so they're trying to protect us from getting our hopes up too high and then getting discouraged. And so one of the things that I've loved about your vision, Justin, is it's never like, your vision has never been, this has to happen by this time.
No.
And it has to look
this way. It's not fantastical
way.
Thinking.
No. It's not like, oh, next year I'm going to make
$1 billion.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Like, and I haven't made my first 100,000, but tomorrow it's going to be $1 billion. Like, it's not unrealistic in the sense of timing or expectations.
Yeah, and I actually think that you should start with vision that you on some level have faith for.
Right.
Because I think people tend to jump into fantasy vision, which is...
Find what feels comfortable and take one step past it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's great. I remember Michael Scott on The Office talking about like how he wasn't worried about money because he'd be on a cruise ship sailing with his family. And when they
showed him as a little boy, or...
No, I'm failing at retelling this story. But anyway, you can tell he's clearly living in a fantasy because he's bankrupt.
Right. He's completely bankrupt. Yeah. Oh, I remember that. And he's talking about all this fantastical, over-the-top thinking.
Totally. And so I just... There's a point where I'm saying, like, we want to grow our vision. So I would say the things I believe for now are bigger than the things I believed for earlier.
Immensely.
Because every year, vision has grown more.
And not only has it grown more, it's grown more because more has been being fulfilled.
Yeah.
And you see your capacity grow. Your ability, you are able to see the grace that's also on it and trust in the grace on something. And that co-partnership dreams, to me, how do I put this? To me, the purest form of dreaming is co-creation and partnership. So it's the idea of I have a capacity that I'm actually leaning into and operating out of my capacity as I move towards the possibility of who I can become and what I can do in partnership with this idea of grace and co-creating with a bigger loving God that's with me in that, who transcends my humanity and goes, yeah, but I'm going to breathe a little bit of life on something you don't even know how to do.
Yeah. I think that it's a beautiful process. It does, like you said, take vulnerability, but there's lots of things like, again, vision. I personally have loved, okay, so this last year when I was really sick, something you would say, you would just come and be like, there's going to be a day where we get to live our lives, where you're not in bed every day. And it wasn't frustration, passive aggressive vision. It was literally telling me, Abby, this is not what your story is going to look like forever. And I think every vision that you have has resistance and tension. And oftentimes the very things, the areas that you are going to be the most successful in are the areas that you get the hardest pushback in. And so for me, it's keeping vision alive. Pretty much without vision, things die. Without vision, relationships die. Without vision, sex lives die. So it's so important to...
I got a vision of our sex life right now.
Gosh. So do I. Okay.
You're supposed to say, what is wrong with you?
What is wrong with you? Well, actually, when you said it, I was like, oh, what is your vision? And then anyway, it is something we do with our sex life at least once a year, sometimes twice or three times. We'll be like, how has our sex life been doing? Where do we want to see more?
Right.
Like breakthroughs, not the right word, but like, where do we want to see it grow? What do we want to see? And then we'll begin to engage in that. And so couples will come in and I'm like, well, are you actively, for me, if they're spiritual, I'll say, are you actively praying about that? Like, let's say you come in and you both recognize that you have huge trauma that triggers you in the way. Well, are you guys actually saying like, there's going to be a day when our trauma doesn't trigger us like this? There's going to be a day when you say something that is offensive and I actually get soft instead of hard. Yep. There's going to be a day when I misunderstand you, I ask what you mean instead of just reacting and shutting the door on you. Yeah. There's going to be a day, there is hope for our relationship. And sometimes I make people just say like, I am learning and growing and I'm going to become somebody who's gentle. I'm going to become someone who's peaceful. I'm going to become somebody who is safe for you. Or I'll have people pick let's say communication is a couple's main issue. There's going to be a day when we're known for our communication.
Yep.
Where people come and ask us about our communication. I'm going to get more and more comfortable using my words instead of becoming an aggressive caveman or cavewoman. Like I'm going to get so good at asking questions. I'm going to get good at leaning in. But I make people declare these things out loud with each other because the two things happen. You're hearing it from the other person, which makes you start to believe it as a reality. And then when you say it yourself, your brain starts to prioritize that this is valuable and important.
Yep. And then you start to believe it. You start to buy your own hype in the best of ways.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just thinking, I was an athlete when I was younger. And when I felt like I was awesome at it, I would kill it. Mm-hmm. Like, it was literally all mental. I could be the all-star player or the worst on the team. It really had to do with how I felt about it.
Yeah.
If I could have learned to catch vision every game, I would have been fine.
I have a quote, and I also wanted to say just a practical thing. There's some of you that when you cast vision, one of the things that you lacked is a practical application or a practical step. And so some people are like, I'm going to become great at finances one day. That's a great place to start. I'm going to, and just getting down to, I'm going to be someone who pays off all their debt. So practically this month, I'm going to make sure that I pay off at least one of my bills that I didn't before. Just practically, I'm going to take one step. Or practically, I'm going to look at my bank account once a week. I wouldn't look at it at all, ever. Not even once a month because I was so scared of it. So I'm just going to look at it once a week and face it head on once a week.
I'm going to get a budgeting app.
I'm going to go buy a book on finances from like Robert Kiyosaki or one of the major finance people and just read one book.
I'm going to go talk to my parents about where my finances are at and ask them to help me set a budget.
I'm going to ask questions on why do I feel such bad emotions about finances and process that with somebody specifically.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's the proactive action with the vision that sets stuff in motion. Mm-hmm. So it's not just all magic, but then it starts creating opportunities. I know that there are times where I said, you know, one day I'm going to have a message that goes all around the world.
Yeah.
Well, I had to get up off my ass and I had to start a podcast back at the time when I did.
Totally.
And I just did it for myself. It wasn't even to send it around the world. I was just like, I feel inspired to start a podcast. So I started our former podcast that I had, and that actually went around to 150 some countries.
Yeah.
And it just evolved.
Yeah.
Out of that space. And I didn't have marketing plans. I didn't do all this stuff. And the reason I'm pointing this out is a lot of times we get caught up in the details of all the extra work that we have to do to get it there.
Oh yeah.
And
it'll
then
kill you.
People really literally shut down and be like, I can't come up with a business plan. It doesn't matter. Friggin' do it.
Just start with one step.
I want to add a quick story to that. Laura, one of our good friends, it's been on the podcast. I was talking to her yesterday.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh yeah. So yesterday was my daughter's birthday. I took the entire day off to go hang out with her. And it turns out she wanted to go hang out with a friend all day. So she was looking at her house and she goes, well, because she got into a new home recently and was like, I'm going to paint the entire house today. So she calls a friend up. They start painting the house. Uh-huh. Well, she gets the house painted by noon. She looks down at the floor and she's like, I hate these carpets. I want to put in wood flooring. So she calls a friend thinking they could help her in a week from now. They go, I got time today.
Oh my gosh.
So she puts wood floor between her mom, a friend, and then this other friend who knows how to do it by midnight, has completed it and has never done it ever before.
Oh my gosh.
And she was just like, I don't know. We'll figure it out along the way.
Totally.
And so a lot of you guys are getting paralyzed in vision because you're asking the question, how, when it's just start.
Just jump.
Just jump.
Just jump.
So this quote, and then you can go ahead and jump in there, that came to mind that I thought was so powerful. I was talking to a friend this weekend. He works for Chip and Jo Gaines. Mm-hmm. Him and his wife do. And just one of my favorite guys to contemplate life with and talk life about. And he says, one of the things I've learned in life is not to lose sight in darkness of what I had clarity on in the light.
Oh, it's so good.
Don't lose sight of what you could see. Don't lose sight in the darkness of what you had clarity on in the light.
Which basically means when we're inspired, we can typically connect to things that are vision for our lives.
Yep.
So it'd be like last year in the beginning of the year, I was like, oh my gosh, this is where we're going. I can see it. I can feel it. This is what's going to happen.
You feel momentum and faith on it.
Then I got so sick. And so suddenly
ran right into a damn brick wall.
Totally. That's what it felt like.
Right.
And so all of a sudden dark. Vision now was to survive.
Right.
It was not how do I like, it's not like, oh, let's get back to that vision. It's like, what do you mean vision? I just need to not drown.
And so now you're fumbling around in the dark and you have to go back to when was the last place I had light?
Mm-hmm. And I can't let go of the light because most of us want to be like, well, did I just make that up?
Yeah, that's a great one.
Well,
maybe I was just lying to myself.
Mm-hmm. Like maybe that wasn't real. Maybe it was a fantasy, instead of being like, no, if I'm in the dark, I'm going to hold on that the vision I had when it felt light out is still true.
I had people who came to me in my early 20s and they said, Justin, one day, and they began to speak some pretty profound thoughts about one day my life was going to hold. And they said, you can take this to the bank. I remember Denzel Washington, he told a story on Oprah.
He said something to you about who you'd be one day.
I know, I'm bunny trailing, but it made me think of him. That's also powerful. But an older woman came up to him at a church and handed him a piece of paper that said prophecy. And it said, one day you will be before millions of people, and went on to talk about the career that he was walking out.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Right. And
that was before he was an actor.
Yeah. That was,
but you're just saying now he's walked it out.
Now he's walked it out, but that was way before he was an actor, all the struggles and everything else that he ran into in that. And it made me think of that because that's pretty profound coming from like Denzel, who's one of my heroes. I love him. But going back to even my story, I had people who told me in my early 20s, you're going to write books. Mm-hmm. They said, you're going to go on to speak and be someone that helps people get transformation. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to be. And there was a lot more into it. And now I'm watching.
And you're like, oh.
The pieces of that walk out in this last decade, and it's only the beginning of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there was something cast in the light. And there were so many places where I got lost in darkness. And I remember in our early marriage,
so many times
where I'd go, I'm a loser. I'm never going to be anything.
Yes.
I'm never going anywhere. And I got to a very dark, hopeless place at times. And I'd have to shake myself out of that and go back to the moment where the light was and tether myself to that.
And hold on to it. I know for me, I was actually going to bring this up, which is some people are like, oh, that sounds like so much work. That sounds like I don't want to do that, like about vision.
Right.
And I'm thinking, or like that seemed like, why do you have to be specific like that? It sounds stupid to say those things out loud, but I'm like, but everybody's saying that kind of vision negatively about themselves all the time.
All the time.
You're never going to make it. You're never going to be financially stable. You're never going to have healthy relationships. Like we hear that voice over and over again. And so actually the voice of vision feels like a very important voice to partner with, because you're actually having vision all the time. Just
what are you having vision for?
Your vision is self-deprecating or negative.
Yeah. And self-destructive. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, and if you are one of those people that you aren't actually seeing, because lots of people have vision and they don't have worth that goes with it.
Yeah.
So you have to have vision, and then you have to do inspired things like when you get sparked, like Laura did, like, I'm just going to paint the house. I'm just going to, like, you actually have to follow action steps as they come to you. But then you also have to work on expanding your worth. And so for me, I know lots of people are like, I'm going to be a millionaire, but they're not expanding their skills. They're not expanding their worth. They don't see them. And so it's actually like a fake ego. It's not true vision.
It's interesting because one of the visions that I'll use this. Tony Stark, one of my favorite characters in the Marvel universe. But I started going, how does Tony Stark feel? Like this character, how does he feel when he talks to people? How does he feel when he approaches projects? How does he feel internally when he takes on new vision? Yeah. And I could see confidence and strength and capability, very capable. So I started like going, all right, I'm going to cash specifically that vision for me and begin to take the small steps towards that, towards what ultimately was his success. Yeah. Right. Here's a wealthy guy who's doing great things, but he had to feel certain ways to be in those shoes.
I'm laughing because you picked a made up man to emulate. He's not even real. You're like,
he's my favorite.
He's successful. I'm like,
Robert Downey Jr. did such a good job emulating him. I want to be Robert Downey Jr. I want to be his friend.
No, you want to be Tony Stark.
I want to be Tony Stark. And Robert Downey, you want to be friends? You out there? You listening?
You listening?
You and Chris Pratt want to hang out?
Right? We got to cast some vision over that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember this story, just to tag off that, and then we're going to wrap up. But one of the people we know who is a counselor, he was getting bullied at school all the time. And his mom said, you know, the kids who feel confident, like I act like you think, I'm about to butcher this story. Do you know what story I'm telling?
Nope.
Okay. So he wanted to go talk to this girl and he was terrified to do it. He'd been bullied a lot. And she's like, look at the confident people and how they act. The people who are popular and comfortable in their own skin. Look at how, and so he watched them. They gave eye contact. They walked up straight forward to people. They were engaging. They didn't like shrink. They weren't like shrugging their shoulders, you know, down. They weren't hanging their head down low. She's like, act like that. And that's not about faking it till you make it. It's about that idea of emulating. And for me, that's part of vision. I spent years just trying to imagine what it would feel like to buy groceries without getting a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
So I would literally, and I wrote out vision about it over and over again. One day I'm going to be able to buy groceries and not feel sick to my stomach. And I would imagine being in the grocery store, and I would imagine feeling peace, feeling like I'm going to be okay. There's going to be more than enough. Everything is going to work out. It's going to be fine. I can eat this, you know, like. But I actually spent time imagining, you pick somebody, like I babysat for this woman when I was growing up, and she'd buy like $200 worth of groceries, which back then was a lot, but also she had like 5 kids. So, I mean, it really wasn't a lot, but to me it was like, oh my gosh. And she would just buy whatever brand of things and whatever. And I would take that concept, I'd watch her and be like, okay, one day I'm going to feel about groceries the way she could feel about groceries. And then I just looked for what are the individual invitations and steps that get presented to me in life to agree with that vision. Because the more you're vision casting, the more you'll be aware. So if we're vision casting about our relationship that we're going to get softer and softer, then we're going to be aware every time there's an invitation to soften.
Yep.
We're going to be aware every time there's an invitation to be vulnerable instead of put our guards up. And I don't think you should go and sit down and have vision in 20 million areas, because that will overwhelm you.
No.
But pick a few and go after it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. I think
you better love that. It was good. And I'm good. And I'm your wife. And I love you.
I love you too. So for some of you, I'm going to, wrapping this up, give you a little bit of homework. But one of the things, going back to that statement or that quote that I gave you, some of you have areas of your life that you've fallen into darkness in. And you once had a light about an area. You had a higher truth. You did have a vision. And I just want some of you guys to sit down and go, is there a place where I'm in darkness and something that once I had light about? And
so
why have I fallen away from that? Is it because I got really scared? Is it because I got really disappointed? What was it? And what will it take me to actually decide to choose back into what was clear in the light, to choose back into the truth or the hope of that, whether it's for my marriage, my friendships, my business, my finances, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my parents. Was there a truth spoken in a moment of light and in a moment of inspiration that you've veered away from that you need to go back to? That's one.
That's so good. It just made me think really quick. When I do marriage consulting with people, I'll have couples. So when they do vision casting, they feel hope, they feel connected. They're like, yeah, we are. And then they get in a fight and they do the things that are opposite of what they said. And they go back to darkness and they're like, there's no hope. We're never going to change. My partner's never going to change. Blah, 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 blah. And they go into the darkness. And it really is the battle of going back and forth. And the more they press in for keeping to what they remembered in the light, the easier it gets. And that's actually the battle. Once that battle's won, the tools are easy to figure out. Yeah.
I love it. Do you have any other homework you want to give someone?
I think anybody, I want you to, whether you're a couple or you're single, I just want you to find somebody to cast vision with. And it can be, it could be external things like I'm going to be debt free, or it could be internal things like I'm going to feel comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And then what I'd recommend doing is I would declare some of those vision things for 2 weeks with somebody every day.
And the reason she says somebody again is like doing that with yourself is great. But again, the vulnerability with someone creates momentum because now you can't ignore it like it didn't happen. And now you get to dialogue openly about it and keep challenging yourself through those open dialogues.
Absolutely.
So everybody, thanks for jumping in and joining us. And by the way, Abby, go ahead and tell them what you think of my new look this year.
Oh, you are.
Walk away.
2020 is looking good on you.
Sure is. I'm looking real good.
What I would like to say is share this, please. That's what we would love for you guys to do. To people who want to listen to it. We're so glad you're our listeners.
Subscribe, and share. But you went past this beautiful look of these new clothes. It's new clothes, new Justin, new clothes, new year, new vision for him even. Just want to point that out. I'm looking dapper. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll leave you with that. Bye now.
Bye-bye.